Daniel's story begins in a dramatic and remarkable way. He was a young nobleman from Judah who saw his life change completely when King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon besieged Jerusalem. This siege was not only a demonstration of military strength, but also the beginning of a great cultural and spiritual transformation. Just imagine, a vibrant city being surrounded by a powerful army. The walls that once protected Judah now seemed fragile against the Babylonian force. Among the young men captured was Daniel, who was taken from his homeland to a completely new and unknown place. The change was so drastic that it seemed as if he had been transported to another world. What made Daniel stand out was not only his nobility, but his firm faith in God. Instead of feeling lost or abandoned, he saw this difficulty as a chance to strengthen his devotion. Daniel's attitude teaches us that it is often in the most difficult times that our faith becomes stronger. Even in captivity, Daniel didn't let the situation break his spirit. He adapted to the new reality without giving up his principles. This shows us that, in an ever-changing world, we can learn to navigate challenging situations without losing our integrity. Daniel's journey to Babylon was more than a physical change. It was a great spiritual and emotional transformation. He left everything he knew and entered a potentially hostile world. But instead of giving in to despair, he saw it as a mission. He understood that his presence in the Babylonian court could have a greater purpose. Daniel's story reminds us of how we deal with our own challenges. Sometimes we feel out of place in a new job, in a new city, or in difficult relationships. Daniel's story encourages us to maintain our faith and integrity, regardless of the circumstances. Daniel didn't hide his faith. It manifested itself in his daily actions. This teaches us that our belief should be reflected in how we live every day. Instead of seeing captivity as the end, Daniel saw it as the beginning of something new. His ability to maintain hope and faith in difficult times shows that, with the right attitude, even the most difficult challenges can be turned into opportunities. Daniel and his friends arrived in Babylon and entered a new phase of their lives. King Nebuchadnezzar, seeing the potential in these young men, decided that they should be prepared to serve in the royal court. It was no ordinary honor, but a great challenge, as they would need to adapt to Babylonian culture and knowledge, almost as if they were at the most prestigious university of the time. The training was rigorous and comprehensive, involving not only the Chaldean language, but also literature, history, astronomy, and the mystical arts. Daniel and his friends were relearning to think in a new language, which required a lot of effort and intelligence. There was a moral dilemma: how to absorb this knowledge without compromising their faith. Daniel found a balance, maintaining his convictions while taking advantage of the opportunity to learn. One of the first tests was food. Instead of refusing the king's food, Daniel proposed an alternative diet of vegetables and water, showing that it is possible to seek creative solutions to ethical dilemmas. Training at the Babylonian court also included learning about politics and diplomacy, and Daniel stood out for his dedication and integrity. He not only studied, but also prepared himself to become a wise and influential advisor. When the time came to be evaluated by the king, Daniel was ready. His years of study had prepared him not only with knowledge, but also with a strengthened faith and a refined character. He was about to become one of the most respected advisors in the Babylonian Empire. In Nebuchadnezzar's court, where banquets were famous for their extravagance, Daniel stood out, showing that with faith and integrity, we can shine in any circumstance. The luxuries of the Babylonian court were tempting, but for Daniel and his friends, they represented a significant moral and spiritual dilemma. Jewish law had strict dietary rules that were not just about what to eat, but about maintaining the identity and faith of the people of Israel, even amidst different cultures. For Daniel, eating from the king's table was not just a matter of preference, but a threat to his spiritual integrity. Daniel could have taken several paths. He could have conformed, saying he was merely following orders or had no choice, or he could have rebelled openly. But he chose a wiser and more courageous path. With respect and diplomacy, Daniel suggested a test to the chief official responsible for the young men in training. He requested to eat only vegetables and drink water for 10 days. This request was not only a practical solution to the dilemma, but also an act of deep faith in God. He knew that if the chief official did not see positive results, he could face the king's wrath. Thus, Daniel trusted that God would sustain them and allow them to prosper even with a simple diet. This kind of faith, which trusts in God even in the face of potential serious consequences, is a powerful example. During the 10 days, Daniel and his friends adhered to their diet. Resisting the temptation of royal delicacies was a significant challenge, especially when everyone around them indulged in luxury. This choice was not just a matter of food, but an act of devotion in an environment hostile to their faith. Daniel showed that integrity and values are more important than comfort or status, challenging us to maintain our principles even when it is difficult. At the end of the test, something remarkable happened. Daniel and his friends appeared healthier and stronger than those who ate from the king's table. This result not only validated Daniel's faith, but also demonstrated to everyone around the power of God. The success of this experiment proved that it is possible to maintain spiritual integrity and still excel in one's responsibilities. Impressed with the results, the chief official allowed Daniel and his friends to continue their diet. This episode showed that our faithfulness can earn respect even from those who do not share our beliefs. Daniel's proposal was also a lesson in leadership. By suggesting a solution that respected both his convictions and the chief's needs, Daniel demonstrated wisdom and consideration. The story of Daniel's diet teaches us about the power of example. His peers, and even some Babylonians, must have observed his choice and its results. Sometimes, our actions speak louder than words, and our silent integrity can profoundly impact others. This episode marked the beginning of a journey full of challenges for Daniel, who would continue to face even greater tests of his faith. But this initial victory strengthened his determination and confirmed his trust in God. The story of the diet is not just about food, but about how to nourish our spiritual life even in environments that may be hostile to our faith. With Daniel's success, he and his friends gained respect and a platform of influence. Their faithfulness in a seemingly small matter prepared them for greater responsibilities. Integrity in everyday matters can open doors to roles of greater impact in the future. Then, one night, King Nebuchadnezzar had a troubling dream that left him confused. He could not remember the dream, but knew it was important. He summoned his advisors, astrologers, and magicians and gave them an impossible challenge: reveal the content of the dream and interpret it, or face execution. When the wise men failed and begged for mercy, Nebuchadnezzar decided to kill them all. It was at this critical moment that Daniel stepped forward. He requested time to decipher the dream, an act of courage that not only saved his life, but also that of the other wise men. Daniel and his friends spent the night in prayer, seeking God's help. In a vision, God revealed to Daniel not only the content of the dream, but also its interpretation. This reinforced Daniel's conviction that God is the source of all wisdom and answers sincere prayers. The next morning, Daniel was brought before the king and made a surprising declaration. No one but God could reveal and interpret the dream. Daniel then described the dream in detail. The king had seen a large statue made of different materials: gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay. Daniel's interpretation showed that the statue represented various kingdoms, starting with the Babylonian Empire. In the end, the statue was destroyed by a stone that became a mountain, symbolizing God's eternal kingdom. King Nebuchadnezzar was impressed by Daniel's wisdom and bowed down before him, offering honors and gifts. This moment was a turning point for Daniel, elevating him from a captive to a respected and influential advisor. The story of Daniel interpreting the dream was not just a personal victory, but also a powerful demonstration of God's power and sovereignty. When we face difficult times, prayer and courage become our greatest allies. Daniel, with his unwavering faith, shows us how to confront impossible challenges and recognize that all wisdom comes from God. Like him, we are called to trust in God and to display his greatness, even when we are in a hostile environment. Daniel's success in interpreting the king's dream opened doors to new responsibilities and challenges, demonstrating that faithfulness to God can prepare us to influence the world around us. In the story of Daniel, we see his faith tested further when King Nebuchadnezzar, overcome by pride, ordered the construction of a massive golden statue on the plain of Dura. This statue was a symbol of his greatness and absolute power. The king decreed that everyone should bow down and worship the statue when they heard the sound of musical instruments. Disobedience meant being thrown into a blazing furnace. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, Daniel's friends, were in the crowd. They faced the greatest challenge of their lives: compromise their faith to save their lives or remain faithful to God and face a terrible death. When the music started and everyone bowed down, they stood firm. This did not go unnoticed, and they were soon denounced. Enraged, Nebuchadnezzar ordered the 3 young men to be brought before him. Even in the face of the death threat, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah responded with courage. They said that their God was able to deliver them from the furnace, but even if he did not, they would not worship the statue. This resolve made the king even angrier. He ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual. The heat was so intense that the soldiers who threw the young men into the fire were consumed by the flames. But to everyone's surprise, instead of cries of pain, there were sounds of footsteps and voices from within the furnace. Nebuchadnezzar looked and saw 4 figures walking freely in the midst of the flames, unharmed. The 4th man appeared to be a son of the gods. This divine manifestation demonstrated God's power over the gods of Babylon. When the young men came out of the furnace, their clothes were intact, with no smell of smoke, and no hair was singed. The miracle profoundly impacted Nebuchadnezzar. He acknowledged the greatness of the God of the Hebrews and issued a new decree prohibiting anyone from speaking against this God. Additionally, he promoted Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah to higher positions in the kingdom. This event is not only about a miracle but about God's faithfulness to those who remain loyal, even in the face of death. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah chose integrity over self-preservation, trusting that God would be with them, regardless of the outcome. The presence of the 4th man in the furnace is seen as a foreshadowing of Christ, who is with us in our difficulties. It reminds us that God is present and sustains us in our most challenging moments. The story of the fiery furnace encourages us to stand firm in our convictions, even when pressured to conform. We must trust in God for the strength to remain faithful, no matter the circumstances. As Daniel's story continues, we see a pattern of faithfulness being rewarded and God revealing himself powerfully. In the next chapter, we will return to Nebuchadnezzar and a new dream that will reveal more about God's character and plans. Nebuchadnezzar was at the height of his power when he had a troubling dream about a massive tree that seemed to reach the heavens. It provided shelter and food, reflecting his own kingdom. But a celestial being appeared and decreed that the tree would be cut down and reduced to a stump, and that the king's heart would be transformed to that of an animal for 7 periods, to show that God is sovereign over all kingdoms. The king called his wise men, and Daniel, known as Belteshazzar, was summoned. Upon hearing the dream, Daniel was surprised and troubled. The king encouraged him to speak, and Daniel interpreted that the tree represented Nebuchadnezzar, whose pride had grown too great. The tree would be cut down, and the king would live like an animal until he acknowledged that God rules over the kingdoms of men. Daniel advised the king to repent, practice righteousness, and show mercy, suggesting that this might prolong his prosperity. Unfortunately, the king did not heed the warning. 12 months later, Nebuchadnezzar boasted of his greatness. At that moment, a voice from heaven declared that his kingdom had been taken from him. The prophecy was fulfilled, and the king was expelled from human society, living like an animal until he acknowledged that God is the true sovereign. Imagine a powerful king, Nebuchadnezzar, living like a simple animal, eating grass and living in the open air for 7 years. The reason? It was a lesson in humility. God wanted to show that, no matter how great a king may be, no one is above divine power. After 7 years, Nebuchadnezzar finally understood this. Looking up to the heavens, he acknowledged that God is the true ruler of everything. With this realization, his sanity returned, he was restored to his throne, and his kingdom began to thrive again. The king who returned was far more humble than he had been before his trial. He did not hesitate to praise the Most High God. As time passed, the story of Nebuchadnezzar gave way to a new narrative involving King Belshazzar. One night, Belshazzar hosted a great feast and, during the celebration, decided to use the sacred vessels from Jerusalem to drink wine and toast to his own gods. This act of disrespect did not go unnoticed. Suddenly, a hand appeared and began writing a mysterious message on the palace wall. Belshazzar was terrified. No one could decipher what was written, and the fear only grew. It was then that the queen remembered Daniel, known for his wisdom and ability to interpret dreams and signs. Daniel was summoned, and, without accepting rewards, he interpreted the message. The message was clear. Belshazzar's kingdom was coming to an end. God had evaluated his reign and found it wanting. Thus, the fall of the Babylonian Empire was imminent. That very night, the Persians invaded the city, which fell quickly. Belshazzar was killed, and the Persian Empire took control. In the new kingdom, Daniel continued to stand out. King Darius recognized his wisdom and made him one of the chief administrators. However, this prominent position bred envy. His rivals, wanting to bring him down, devised a trap. They persuaded Darius to sign a decree that forbade prayers to any god except the king, under penalty of death in the lion's den. Daniel, faithful to God, did not change his habits. He continued praying 3 times a day, even knowing about the decree. His enemies reported him, and Darius, saddened that he could not save Daniel, had to enforce the law. However, God did not abandon Daniel. He sent an angel to protect Daniel in the lion's den. The next morning, Darius rushed to the den and was relieved to hear Daniel's voice, unharmed. King Darius, impressed by the miracle, issued a new decree, commanding that everyone respect the God of Daniel. The story of Daniel in the lion's den became a powerful testimony of faith and courage. It shows that faithfulness to God, even in the face of threats and unjust laws, can result in divine protection and a powerful witness to the world. Daniel continued to prosper and influence important events in the Persian Empire, proving that, even amid adversity, God is in control and can perform miracles. If you enjoyed this incredible story and want to stay updated with more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Leave a like and share with your friends so more people can learn about these fascinating stories. Your participation makes all the difference.